Hey, I'm Hunt, and this is Hunt on LSU, your channel for LSU Fighting Tiger football talk. Enjoy the video. We want you to leave a comment below, hit that like button, and subscribe right below the video. Enjoy, Ponderosa. And one of those prevailing themes is LSU's issues on the defensive line. You've brought in Bo Davis. You feel like he's the guy to help fix it, but it's not going to be an instant thing. I think an exercise that I did earlier this morning that was a little bit revealing to me was putting down the entirety of the depth chart on LSU's defensive line. You know that the depth is not great. However, it's a little bit better in terms of just numbers than I thought just kind of off the top of my head. Like I could go through and like name you the defensive linemen that I thought were going to be players on this team coming forward. But they have more defensive linemen than I thought. The issue is somewhat depth to me, but the bigger issue is I don't know that they've got the high-end talent that great LSU teams have had. In fact, I know they don't. Because I've got 13 guys written down on this sheet of paper here that are defensive linemen on LSU's team. Now, that's not enough, but it's not like they don't have any warm bodies. On the outside, you've got Deshaun Womack, you've got Savion Jones, you've got Paris Shand, who can play inside or outside, you've got Braden Swinson, you've got Gabe Relaford, you've got Dylan Carpenter. Like, that's 6 guys who play on the edge. On the inside, you've got Jacobian Gillery, you've got Jalen Lee, you've got Sean Washington, you brought in Gio Paez as a transfer, Dominic McKinley, Preston Hickey, the Oklahoma State transfer, Demarion Johnson, who's a freshman. I mean, that's 7 guys in the interior right there. It's not like they don't have anybody, but the production from this group of guys is nearly zero at the college level. Last year, Deshaun Womack made 13 tackles, 1.5 behind the line of scrimmage. Last year, Savion Jones, in what I hoped to be his breakout year, made 33 tackles. He had 2.5 sacks, 3.5 TFLs. Like, that's not super productive. Paris Shand, limited playing time last year, had 17 tackles. He did have 5 TFLs, which is encouraging. He had 2 sacks. He didn't play a ton, but the production was not huge. Braden Swinson was out on the field a lot, just 35 tackles over the course of the season, 6.5 TFLs, 2 sacks. And you got Gabe Relaford and Dylan Carpenter who haven't played. Jacobian Gillery's kind of been a career backup. Not kind of been, he's been a career backup. Last year he made 27 tackles and nothing behind the line of scrimmage, no sacks, no tackles for loss. Jalen Lee made 2 tackles last year. I mean, those are probably, as you sit here today, your top 2 defensive tackles. Jacobian Gillery and Jalen Lee, they combined for 29 tackles and nothing behind the line of scrimmage last year. Both 4th-year players. Sean Washington, junior college. Gio Paez made 23 stops last year for Wisconsin. He had 0.5 tackle for loss. No sacks. Dominic McKinley was in high school. Demarion Johnson was in high school. Preston Hickey didn't play last year. Didn't record a stat. Like, you look at the guys that you've got on the interior. Yeah, there are 7 of them. They've totaled it last year for LSU 0.5 tackles for loss. In fact, that one was at Wisconsin. That's Gio Paez. Total. Like 7 defensive tackles is enough. But you don't have guys that are ready to be LSU level SEC defensive tackles. You just don't. Now, Brian Kelly spoke on Saturday about the production of Jacobian Gillery and about how he's come along, because you lose Mason Smith, you lose Mekhi Wingo, and he was kind of the next man up after Jordan Jefferson. And so Kelly spoke to the development of Jacobian Gillery.
In terms of stopping the run, Jacobian Gillery has been outstanding. I mean, he's singularly been, I think, in terms of what Bo Davis is looking for, he's been outstanding, and he's been a stalwart. We got to find the other guy, and that's what we're looking for. We're trying to develop that second guy, and then we'll have some depth guys behind him.
So the second guy, like, is it Jalen Lee? My hope is that Sean Washington is that guy. That's a former 4-star recruit, good enough to sign at Georgia. My hope, but it sounds like he's got a ways to go. Gio Paez played on the edge most of the time for Wisconsin. They're going to hope to move him inside. He was on Matt Moscona's show after further review after me a couple weeks ago when he committed and said, yeah, I'm going to play inside. And so that's something he wants to do in a 4-down front. But that's not something he has done. I don't know how much you can count on Dominic McKinley to go in there and and play as a freshman. That seems like a lot. They've got to find somebody in the transfer portal. If you can find an average SEC body, to talk about wins above replacement in baseball, and you're comparing it to the average. If you can find me an average starter, I don't need him first team all league. I don't need him to be the 18th pick in the next draft. I'm not looking for Glenn Dorsey here. If you can find an average player, I think it changes how the defense looks. I really do. I don't know if there's going to be an elite level player you can grab. Now, Bear Alexander, former 5-star, transferred to USC, played pretty well last year. Sounds like he's going to the transfer portal. So maybe that is a high-level impact guy, and there's somebody like that you can find. That story's to be told because the transfer portal window is not open yet. But if Gillery comes on and has a better year and you can find another average guy, I'll feel better about the makeup of the defense. Right now, I'm concerned the team's just going to turn around and hand it right off and run right outfield. Like that's what this group of names looks like to me. And that's the biggest issue, is stopping the run. If you can't stop the run, you got no chance. Because there's nothing easier for an offense to do than turn around, hand the ball off, and get 8 yards. Like you'll never stop anybody. You've got to find a way to hold up against the run. The pass rush would be the next thing to come. And look, I'm looking at Deshaun Womack, a sack and a half last year. Does he have a huge leap from year 1 to year 2? Savion Jones, 2.5 sacks. Can we expect him to post 8 or 9? It doesn't feel like that. Parashand had 2 sacks. Braden Swinson had 2 sacks. I don't know where the pass rush is going to come from. I know that Blake Baker prioritizes that. He wants to create that. The question is, how do you do it? And Brian Kelly spoke to LSU's pass rush on Saturday.
When we talk about the defensive line, you're talking about a combination of whether it's third down and we have our third down pass rushers in there. Because I don't know if you saw in one instance, we've moved, Braden Swinson inside. We've got Paris Shand inside. And then you've got on the edge, you've got Womack on the edge. You've got Harold on the edge. I mean, you've got a different configuration. And I think we can be really dynamic with some of the defensive linemen moving the pieces around. And I think that's what we're going to be doing. I think on first and second down, we're going to have to really work hard in getting after the quarterback on first and second down. But the pass rush is coming from a combination of ends and, kind of that drop position being moved inside.
You know how I feel about press conferences. I don't really care what you say. I just want results. You can handle the press however you want. You can tell half-truths. You can out-and-out lie. You can be very forthcoming. None of that bothers me on either way because the goal number 1 is to win. But that quote right there, that felt honest. That felt like exactly the page that the staff is on. We understand that the guys we have on the inside are not super dynamic and aren't going to add a ton of pass rush. That's just not Jacobian Gillery's game. Jalen Lee's not going to become that in his 4th, 5th year in college. Yeah, we're not going to be super dynamic on the interior at rushing the passer. But what we can do is when we force teams into obvious passing downs, we can get creative and use our talent in a way that maybe can affect the passer. You put some better pass rushers on the inside in Parashand and Braden Swinson, who were a little slipperier than your 310, 320-pound defensive tackles. We can bring Harold Perkins down and put him in a spot that we know he can excel in. Deshaun Womack can take the next step as that former 5-star edge rusher. Now, you got to get him in those situations. You've got to get into 3rd and 8, which is going to be tough. But that's the creative things that you can do if you can stop the run early or force some incompletions early. That sounds a little more encouraging to me. I think we're all pretty concerned with what this defensive line is going to be. You ask any LSU fan, what's the biggest concern that you have about this LSU team? If they don't say just defense as a whole, it starts defensive line. And it's a little bit better in terms of numbers than I thought just off the top of my head. But the talent level is not where the elite LSU teams generally are. Now, maybe Bo Davis, as the first real defensive line coach to get to work with these guys in 3 years, can do a little bit more developing than we saw the last 2 years. Maybe. You've had a tough situation there with Jimmy Lindsey getting sick and trying to bring in Pete Jenkins. You're moving John Jancic around. That story as well. And Bo Davis brings stability to that group. I don't know how much he can get out of these guys, but it'll likely go a long way in determining what LSU's final outcome, final record is this year, based on whether or not they're the worst defensive front in the SEC or very solidly middle of the road. And if you can get that out of them, I think LSU will be in pretty good shape. We'll see what the transfer portal holds, and we'll see what they can do on Saturday in the spring game. But that's just kind of my look at LSU's defensive front for the spring game and into the 2024 season. If you're looking for LSU football content, we've been talking about it for 6 weeks here, just about every day. You can check us out on YouTube. Hunt on LSU is where you can find our LSU content. Hunt on LSU. If you subscribe up to that channel, we would certainly appreciate it. We'll talk a little bit more football with Glenn West. We'll also touch on the baseball Tigers as they take on McNeese tonight at Alec Box. Come back with us on the Hunt Palmer Show. Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.